And nice and warm in here with a wood heater. I made a video of this in the daylight, and as so many times before, it ran out a bit too long. But what I want to talk about this time is something I don't usually talk about, and that is mice and rats. Now, you may find, as I have found, when moving into an old cottage out in the country, if you buy a place that already has a shed on it, or an old farmhouse where services may have been connected, or one that hasn't been lived in for a number of years in particular, that you may have a mouse problem or a rat problem or both. And there's a bit behind it. And what it is when you've got a lot of trees, when you have a lot of fields around you, and particularly if you've got a lot of wheat fields or corn fields or stuff like that, these animals are in the fields and they sort of come in, and you poison the ones that do come in, and lo and behold, they're just replaced again by another lot. And it's because they all live out in the paddock, and there's certain times where they come in. Sometimes they come in for food. Sometimes they come in, quite often here in the winter, it's well known in this country that they come in purely for the warmth. The building is being heated. And, it's warmer in here, so they come in here for the warmth. The other thing is the little holes out there get full of water when it rains and whatnot. And they can make a little nest inside your house, inside the wall space, or even better still, the ceiling space. And, they're dry. And between the heating system you got in your house and nice insulation bats and little gaps in between the walls, and in behind appliances such as fridges and stoves, and the crumbs that you leave on the kitchen table, and the stuff that may fall out and get down the side of the stove, like bits of pancakes, or when you go to flip fried eggs, you might have a little bit disappears, falls out, and just little bits and pieces that they sort of get their hands on and eat. Anyway, I might as well tell you, in the 2 years I've been here, I literally spend a couple of $100 a year on pellets. Now, there's several options. You may find that a cat is a good option for you. Look, let's face it, there are that many dogs and cats here. The ground's only just starting to recover from all the flaming dog shit, and I don't really want any obligations of having a cat I've got to feed. And I've had, other cats that have been dumped here before, and they go and eat all the birds and the flipping lizards, and they don't touch the mice. And, your cat can't always get into spaces that the mice can get into. So, that doesn't always work. Furthermore, cats in themselves, if they piss in your house or something, it stinks. And, I don't want to have to deal with all that sort of stuff. If, with pregnant women, there's bacteria in cat poo that doesn't really go very well with the unborn baby either. So, that may be an option for you, but it may not be the be-all and end-all. Furthermore, I will say that one of the dump cats I had here ate dead mice, or mice that were heavily under the influence of mice poison, and it died as a result of eating those mice. I could hear it meow, but couldn't see where it was. And then the next day I walked past and the area that I was in, and found it was only a few metres away, and it had died. But anyway, traps. Well, I had about 3 or 4 traps I put out. These mice were just way too smart. I think it's sort of been like selective breeding when he had the dogs here. Any that were seriously dumb, the dogs would have attacked or the cats would have gotten. and so basically the ones left are sort of smart. They ate the baits off the trap every time, and I never caught any of them, except once, and it was when a mouse walked backwards into a trap. No joke, that's the only mouse I got in 4 months, with 3 or 4 traps. So, it may work with traps, but on occasion, they're just too smart for it. And I find the best option I have is poison. Sometimes I've had just mice, sometimes I've had just rats, sometimes I've had a combination of both. And for 6 months in this 2 years, I had nothing at all. And then they come back again. But I find for me, poison works the best, that I can just buy it, pour it out, and they sort of eat away. Now, honestly, I've had them that noisy in the roof sometimes, fighting amongst each other, particularly rats, that they've actually woken me up one night. And, this is sort of how much commotion they can get up to. And some of them, I don't know if they're eating other food or they just become immune to that brand of poison, and they do become immune to some brands. Do realise that, because there's some brands that, are common enough, but the mice become resistant to them. And so you've got to sort of change brands every once in a while. But one thing I noticed is with me, but it may not be the case with you, rats went for the wax blocks, the waterproof ones, but the mice now aren't sort of interested in them. They sit there for a long time with very little mucking around on them. I was using those after I seen they were eating candles, and I thought, well, if they're going to eat candles and soap bars, I literally had 2 soap bars stolen out near my little rainwater tank, and the rats nicked off with them and must have eaten them. And I thought they just fell down in the grass, and later on I went and clipped all that area of the grass. I was poking around in there with my hands. There's nothing there. They flippin' stole me soap twice. Anyway, then I made up a little thing out of a couple of tin cans, and I keep my soap in that, and I've had the same bit of soap there for a very long time, and I haven't touched it. But, some may go for the wax blocks and others just go for the pellets, but I will tell you one thing, if they run out of pellets, don't be surprised if they literally eat through the side of plastic buckets to get to the pellets. My old man's had it happen at work. He forgot to put baits out and this and that, so they just ate through the side of the plastic bucket and got into it anyway. I had them biting into the lid of mine here when they got hungry to try and get to it. So keep the feed up to them, because if you don't, they'll flip and eat through the bucket anyway. And you may have wasted your chance of a good usable bucket, because the ones I get, they actually got a plastic bag inside the bucket, so you can get all the poison out, and then the bucket essentially is clean. I wouldn't be using it for drinking, but I do use it for doing a bit of small cement work and stuff like that, that I have, large gloves. I have heavy-duty gloves, waterproof ones that I use for any cement work, and I just throw in a bit of pre-mixed sand and cement, or pre-mixed quick-set cement, or concrete rather, or plain concrete, or whatever, and mix a bit of gravel and cement or whatever, and they're good for using that, those buckets for doing a bit of small cement work, but you won't have the chance to use that bucket if the sods bite through the side of it, and often they go for the lid because that's the weakest point. But yeah, they seem to like the pellet stuff, but having said that, they still sort of survive anyway. And when I read a lot of these instructions on this pelletized stuff, a lot of it says it's a week from when they first eat it to when they die. So you may go, oh gosh, nothing's happening. I put all this stuff out, they've eaten it all already, how come they're not all dead? Well, they won't die straight away. They'll take like a week to die. But I find that has been my best option. And I can never quite flatten them all because they're either immune to it or something like that. But I'm about to change brands again. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. But some of them, I don't know if they've got other food sources that they eat grains out in the paddock. And between that, they can handle a bit of the poison and sort of slightly resistant to it. But either way, you still seem to have them a fair bit. But I seem to notice also, because I work very late and that, if they do get on the move, they get really going like about 3 a.m. But if you're here during the day, you won't hear boo. And then when you hear like after midnight, they start to get going quite a bit, and by 3 a.m. they're really having a scuffle. And then sort of by, 4 or 5 a.m. they're shut up because it's cold, and I think they're just trying to stay in their nest and keep warm sort of thing. Or I don't know, maybe they got too tired and gone snoozies himself. But yeah, the other factor here is there's plastic bags underneath this house that my uncle's dog's dragged under there, and I hear them shuffling around in those, and they actually make nests in them. You can tell they're building a nest because you can hear all the plastic bags crackling away as they're trying to, make a nest out of them, which doesn't really help the situation. Yeah, I've had some very close encounters with them, but yeah, I'll just go through a few quickly. No, I won't actually. Some of them are pretty rough on it, so yeah, I'll just leave it at that. But